Hey guys, it's Libby, and this is me officially giving up on Veda. It turns out you should not make a significant daily commitment that requires special equipment when you are like moving into a new house and starting a new job. You probably will not be able to pull that off. Ropeda, on the other hand, going quite well. I've fallen behind one day, and I've decided if I fall behind, I'm just gonna erase and not try to catch up because I lack ambition. And besides, Dewey's is coming up later this month. I'm gonna catch up then if I need to, so I'm not bothered about tracking it out. Also, last video you saw a bit of me building this bookshelf before my camera ran out of batteries. Here it is. It doesn't actually fit that many more books than my last bookshelf because it's a lot taller. Let's fancy camera work here. It's a lot taller, but it is also a lot skinnier. So there may be yet another bookshelf acquisition in my future. Also, I have decided that the rolly chair is awesome and I am not getting rid of it. But enough with news. Today's video is about the first word of a book. People spend a lot of time talking about first sentences. I know that authors try to painstakingly craft the ultimate first sentence that will sort of encapsulate the idea of the book while drawing you in at the same time. I am getting even more high up on that ivory tower and looking at just the very first word. This, of course, involved going through all of my books and seeing what the first word was. And occasionally I had to just sort of randomly decide which the first word was. I tried to go for the one that was the first word that you would read when you really settled down to reading the story. So normally prologues counted, but like dedications and epigraphs, and that sort of thing didn't count. And as you would expect, there were a couple of very common first words. I had 7 I's, 24 thes, and 15 proper names. I didn't list them all out separately. Interestingly, there were only 2 A's. But I guess that makes sense because it's more of a strong and intriguing opening to start with a definite article than an indefinite article. Like if your first sentence is, a book was on the table, that's kind of okay. But if you say, the book was on the table, then it's like, ooh, what is this book and why is it the book? An interesting pair of first words that I found were once and there. Now most of the books starting with the word once were The Princess Tales by Gail Carson Levine, and they started once upon a time. But occasionally you'd run into just once standing in for that sort of phrase because it's still trying to create that fairy tale atmosphere without sounding juvenile. So like in the Night Garden by Catherine M. Valente, your first sentence is, once there was a child whose face was like the new moon shining on cypress trees and the feathers of water birds. It's already quite prosy and metaphorical, so adding once upon a time I feel like is kind of overkill. And then in Terry Pratchett's book, Sorcery, you have a similar sort of fairy tale-like setup, but he leaves off the once upon a time and just starts with the there. Your typical fairy tale starts, once upon a time there was. This one just jumps into, there was a man and he had 8 sons. Sort of leaving us to fill in our own once upon a time. And then there were 2 categories of words, which I think are my favorite for starting a book with. The first one is imperative verbs. These are commands, and this is pretty much the only time you're going to start with a verb as your first word, unless I guess you have a question. If you start with dialogue, like, do you remember? But imperatives are just obviously far superior because they draw your attention. And let's see, we've got visualize in Douglas Adams. I think it's his first Hitchhiker's book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And then Michel Faber really likes this type of opening. He's got watch and close. And Michel Faber is just like rocking the first word. I don't know if it's just coincidental or if he is a super genius. He's probably a super genius. But so you've got two of his books start with these imperatives. And then another of his novels, Under the Skin, starts with a name, but that name is Isserly, which is like a freaking weird name. So you have to read the book after just that one word. And then my other favorite category is temporal prepositions. So some of these are later and when, but by far the best one, I think we can all agree, is after. Because then you are starting in media res, and I only have one book that starts with the word after. It is The Meaning of Night, which has possibly the most famous first sentence on my bookshelves. Good, I do not have Pride and Prejudice on my shelves. I own the ebook because that's a pretty famous first line. But the first line of this book, I don't even have to read it, is, "After killing the red-haired man, I took myself off to Quinn's for an oyster supper." Part of this is because I like sort of mysterious books. And so it's always good when our main character has already done something before we get involved in their lives. And then finally, I'm just going to do a list of other first words that I thought were quite intriguing. They are hobbling, hush, rats, exclamation point, and thud. So I really hope you guys are willing to take the time to open every book that you own and discover what the first word is, and then come make a video or talk in the comments about your favorite first words or least favorite first words. I didn't really have any that I hated, but maybe you do. And I will see you soon.